Hey everyone! Welcome to the Dr. Mama Minute, where Dr. Burton will share snackable bits of information based on things going on in her life, in her practice, or things being discussed in her social media channels. So sit back and prepare to be dazzled by topics that you may or may not have thought were important in your life.
Hey there, everyone. It's Dr. Burton here to share my next episode of the Dr. Mama Minute. I'm going to be talking about food choking hazards in kids. It's a really important topic for parents with young kids to keep in mind because toddlers love to shovel food into their mouths. Eating food takes time and toddlers are always in a hurry. Parents need to keep in mind that even though their kids are eating the same type of foods, maybe every day, caution should be used every single time some of these foods are given to young kids. Just to highlight the importance of this topic, according to the Academy of Pediatrics, choking is a leading cause of injury in kids under age 4. And although I'm specifically talking about toddlers today, I just want to share that thousands of adults over age 70 die from choking every year as well. So generally, choking impacts the very young and the very old. The average adult tends to only have this problem when eating things like those really cute roast beef sliders, often served as appetizers at some type of gathering or function. Yes, they do look like cute little pint-sized sandwiches, but remember, there's a big chunk of chewy meat inside waiting to get stuck in your throat. So bite, chew, then swallow. Great tips for everyone, everywhere. As a pediatric ENT, one of the things I spent time learning during my fellowship was how to treat airway problems. So choking and inhaling on foreign object is a big one. In toddlers, it's often because food was poorly chewed. Do you remember hearing how bad it is to talk with food in your mouth? Well, you might have thought it was just for good manners because no one really wants to see your half-chewed food. But the other important thing is that when you have food in your mouth and you suck air in, like screaming toddlers often do, food shoots into the airway. That is never a good thing. So this again highlights one of the reasons I talk about chronic mouth breathing being really bad, and I put a link to one of my previous posts. But I've had more than my fair share of parents who complain about chronic mouth breathing kids who have poor table manners. They smack their lips and they chew with their mouth open, and they often have choking episodes. So fixing that stuffy nose so that they're not chronic mouth breathers, that also helps them in chewing and avoiding choking. Closing the mouth to chew and swallow is the best way to eat. Sucking air in while eating, well, that's just asking food to go into your voice box instead of going down into your stomach. So right now I want to take a minute and talk about what choking on food means. Usually we just mean food got stuck somewhere. It can be in the esophagus and the food not make it down into the stomach, or it can be inhaled in the airway. So choking, most people kind of mean both of those. But obviously sucking food into the airway is more severe. But in young kids, when food gets stuck in their esophagus, it's very easy for it to push forward and narrow the airway at the same time. So in little kids, even though the food is stuck in the esophagus, in either place, it can make kids have trouble breathing. So exactly how common is choking on food? I always knew toddlers choked on food a lot. However, I didn't know exactly how common it was. And in preparation for this episode, yes, I did prepare. Even though I'm trying to have these mini episodes a little more superficial, I'm still struggling with my type A personality that wants to go big or go home. It's a process, so it's kind of superficial. Anyway, I learned that over 30 kids are seen in the emergency room every day due to choking on food. And sadly, one child dies every day from choking on food. These two facts help to understand why choking is the 4th leading cause of unintentional death in kids under age 5. Of course, remember these numbers that I just described are the most severe episodes. How many of us have seen a child choke, but the food is able to be removed? Emergency avoided. But please understand that the life-threatening choking can occur at any moment in a young child's life, even though it's more of the exception than the rule. Awareness and prevention are key. So let's get to the heart of this episode. I now want to list what I call the dirty dozen common food choking hazards, especially in toddlers. These foods are eaten on a pretty regular basis. Number 1 is hot dogs. Oh my goodness, this is actually one of the most deadly foods to choke on. Watch how many kids open their mouths wide, take a huge bite, and then swallow it. It's very dangerous. Monitor kids when eating hot dogs very well. Also, hard candies. Got that candy in there, they're swallowing it, can choke. popcorn, Skittles, M&Ms, basically any food that kids can cram into their mouth by the handful. Grapes. Look at the shape of that grape. If you don't bite it, cut it, that grape is easy to plug that airway. I throw in raisins as well because raisins can fit into the handful like popcorn and M&Ms, but they go in, can block up the airway. Obviously, chunks of meat or carrots, chunks of hard raw vegetables, apples, chunks of hard fruit, cheese, big chunks of cheese, especially like string cheese. So notice the trend, chunks of. When we have big chunks of food, easy for kids to choke on. Next category, nuts and seeds. Again, handfuls of things or big round pieces that if aren't properly chewed, easy to get stuck. Next, peanut butters or caramels. Who hasn't had that peanut butter sandwich that gets stuck in the roof of the mouth? So you take a big bite of peanut butter and have that get stuck in your airway can be very difficult. So basically, any of the ooey gooey sticky substances. Marshmallows, I'm going to put those as an aside because you can have a big square of marshmallow that gets stuck or the little tiny ones that you chew them up. It's ooey and gooey. And the last one is gum. Swallowing a big ball of gum, yes, that will block the airway. Right now, I want to give an honorable mention to fish bones. These are small and they don't block the airway, but they often will stick in the lining of the esophagus and the breathing tube. They can be really hard to swallow and often need to be surgically removed. So fish bones in kids, that'd be a no. So how do we diagnose the problems? Most of the time, an adult is nearby and reports that choking has occurred. But sometimes the adult has recently left the room and returns to a choking child. If one of these classic food choking hazards was eaten, this will be extremely helpful for you to share that information with the physician. When seen in the emergency room, kids are checked to make sure they can breathe well. If not, kids can often be taken directly to the operating room where telescopes are used to find and remove the food. Sometimes a chest x-ray is obtained. This may not show the food since it usually doesn't show up on this type of study, but it can show the degree of blockage or any complications. When a child has had coughing during a meal and then the coughing goes away, this does not mean that the food particles came out. Food that does not cause immediate blockage can cause swelling and blockage later on. So if trouble breathing happens and there has been a recurrent cough or an episode of choking on food, x-rays are important because they can show that pneumonia has happened behind the blocked food, or it can show that air is staying trapped in the lungs because it can't escape past the food blockage. So the main take-home message is that preventing food choking is better than any treatment. Some basic tips for parents to use can include that adults really need to be present when toddlers are eating at all times. As soon as you go into another room for a few minutes, a toddler can shovel a handful of grapes into their mouths. They're very quick. You need to be there. Also, cutting up food into small pieces. Making sure kids are sitting up when they're eating, not lying down. Sitting in a chair with a straight back instead of on that lounge chair, that lazy boy. That's kind of like laying down for a young child. Avoid eating in the car seat or stroller because, again, this is not normal positioning and shoveling in food, easier to get caught. And also, don't allow older siblings to feed toddlers because they don't really have a handle on how quickly the child is swallowing and chewing up the food. Other important things for parents to do is to educate kids about eating and stress things like importance of chewing their food slowly and thoroughly before taking another bite, not talking and laughing with a mouthful of food, because not only can you suck that food into the voice box, but if you're talking, food can go into the back of the nose as well. And let me just tell you, pulling corn from the nose, that's not fun either. Even though it's not life-threatening, who needs food up in their nose? Kids also should be taught to only put as much food into their mouths as they can comfortably chew. So what should you do if a child is choking on food? As I already said, prevention is best. Try to keep it from happening. But if it does happen, the most important thing for any adult to do is to quickly help and make sure the child is breathing. This means that all parents and adults taking care of kids need to learn infant and child CPR. This is very different from traditional adult CPR. The Heimlich Maneuver, it's a way to help remove trapped food or any foreign body so that air can get past the blockage. I recommend all parents become familiar with this maneuver. I put a link to a reference guide that has some of the basics for life-saving infant and toddler measures in my show notes, but there's many classes available in communities as well as online. All right, so it looks like my minutes are up, so that's it for now. Until the next time.
Thanks for listening to the Dr. Mama Minute. Now you can go back to living your best life.